Hello, hello, hello. All right, so let us talk about managing stress and burnout. And before you tune out, let me tell you why this is such an important topic, is because I think that there are things that lead to burnout, which is stress and overwhelm and really like letting yourself get exhausted. They are under noticed. Because they're under noticed, we don't prevent burnout before we get to it. We don't prevent this feeling of exhaustion and like I'm just feeling really dull about life and my work and I'm not excited about taking it all on. So we don't recognize all of that before we get to that point. Or even when we are at that point, we often don't recognize it. But also, these underlying causes, these things that are happening in us, they actually have a bigger impact on productivity, on procrastination, on all of these things that we're talking about in this season, bigger impact on all of that than we realize. And so hear me out, give me at least 1 minute to explain that, and then decide if this is going to be an important topic for you to listen to this episode. Because I actually think people want to get to the tactics, but they're skipping over these topics. And so stress and burnout. So burnout is the point where you've already exhausted yourself. You're already like, I can't do anymore. And your body and your mind shut it all down. Like I just cannot keep going. There's a point where you just have nothing left and you just can't keep going. But that's already way too far. If you want to run optimally, like if you want to run the engine of your body and mind of your life optimally, you won't even get close to that because that is like, imagine if you owned a car and this is like, an amazing sports car, right? A Lamborghini. I don't know much about cars. And then a Lamborghini and you run it without changing any of the oil, without, attending to the engine, without doing the routine maintenance. You just keep running it and running it and running and running it, just constantly driving it 24 hours a day without any maintenance, without letting it rest, without anything, you're going to run that thing into the ground. And not only will it eventually crash and burn, but for a long time before that, it's not going to be running optimally at all. So if you want your machine to run optimally, you need to understand the things that lead to burnout and stop them, deal with them way, way before you get to burnout. Burnout means that you've been running thousands of miles too long without actually addressing the underlying issues. So what we're really talking about here is not just, how to prevent this burnout thing, which is way, way, way down the road, but actually how to run optimally. And if you want to run optimally, then let's this is the episode for you. So, what are we talking about? Burnout is that end state, but what are the things that lead to burnout? The main thing is stress and then tiredness, right? Stress, we work really hard, we stress ourselves. Stress in and of itself is not a problem. We want to stress ourselves, right? We want to actually be pushing into discomfort and uncertainty and working hard and challenging ourselves. If we don't have challenge in our lives, we're not going to be growing, we're not going to be learning, we're not going to be doing anything interesting. We're actually going to be shrinking ourselves. And so if you don't want to shrink your life, then what we want is some challenge. So we want some stress. It means that we are actually pushing ourselves to challenge. But what we have to do is recognize that stress has a response. If we stress ourselves, we we can actually get stronger from that stress. It's like working out. If I lift weights, I can actually get stronger from lifting the weights, or I can injure myself. So lifting a weight will actually have two different possible responses. One is that I get stronger, and the other one is that I hurt myself. And the difference is, am I overdoing the stressor? And am I letting myself recover? So if lifting weights, if you lift something really heavy, if you lifted it too heavy, you will actually hurt yourself. You will hurt yourself. And if you don't give yourself enough rest, you won't actually get stronger. You're going to get weaker over time. So what you want to do is have the right amount of stress and then the right amount of recovery for working out, but also for the work that you're doing in your life. So this is the thing that we want is that we want to recognize that people overdo the stress, so they're lifting too much weight, and they underdo the recovery, and that's what leads to burnout. And we don't recognize the symptoms. That's actually not a bad thing to overdo the stress sometimes. But what we need to recognize is, oh crap, I overdid it. I need to let myself recover. Again, going back to the physical training, if you were, let's say, training for a marathon, right? And you did like a really hard run, and then next day you're like completely exhausted and sore, like you could barely walk. Well, you overdid it. That isn't necessarily a problem if you recognize that you overdid it, and then you give yourself more recovery time than you normally would have. But the problem is, if we use this analogy with our work, with our lives, we are doing the really hard run, so the next day we're waking up sore and tired and we can barely walk. But then we're going out and doing the regular thing that we would do anyway without giving ourselves that kind of recovery. And that's the problem. It isn't that we're overdoing it, it's that we don't recognize we're overdoing it and we don't recognize that we need recovery. And then we don't adjust our load. And so I think it's really helpful to talk about this physical training because I actually am really into physical training, whether it's strength training or running or sports. We it's okay to stress ourselves. It's okay to overload ourselves sometimes, but we want to recognize the symptoms of that, which in the case that I'm talking about is I'm super sore, I can barely walk, I feel really tired, like a bit irritable is another thing, and I need some rest. So if you recognize that, if you were an athlete actually training, or you had a good coach, your coach would tell you, hey, take today as a rest day, or just do a really easy walk or very very slow jog, but don't push yourself today. Go easy, back off for the next couple of days. Maybe do a little bit harder tomorrow, but nothing hard at all, nothing intense. And then the next day, once you're recovered, then you can start to do some hard stuff again. So how do we take that and apply it to work and everything that we're doing in our lives? Well, recognize, what is my stress load? Am I taking on a lot right now? Great, that's totally okay. But then how am I feeling the next day? And if I'm feeling so like exhausted, sore could be one thing, but it could be that my brain feels drained and I don't feel like taking anything on. I feel irritable. Maybe I'm very easily like irritated by other people or the world. Maybe I am, not feeling as, energetic about my life, about, excited about my projects. If that's the case, then I need a little bit of recovery. And, what could that look like? Well, it could mean give myself a full rest day or a self-care day. Go to some, get a massage, take some naps. Um, do something with friends that feels regenerative, recuperative. Go to have a spa day. I like to once in a while get a massage, but another thing that I like to do is go to um, a place that has saunas and steam rooms and hot tubs and cold plunges. And I like to do that, and it's super relaxing, and I feel super restored afterward. So I don't do that every day, but when I do it, that's something that really replenishes me. Another thing is I like to do is go out in nature. Another thing I like to do is just take some rest time and maybe read a bit more. Now, I'm not saying I do zero work on those days. Maybe I do a little bit, but I give myself a break. I might work fewer hours. I might move some calls if I need to. I might hang out with people who make me feel good and not stressed. So I lower the commitments, lower the stress, increase the recuperative, regenerative type activities. Nature and space and peace and rest. These are really good things for me. I like to have, hot tea, take a hot bath or a hot shower. These things are really good for me. Maybe go for a swim if there's something that something like a swimming pool or a lake or an ocean nearby. Um, I honestly will take naps. And so that's the day after stressing myself. Maybe I need 2 days like that. Sometimes I've been working really hard for like several weeks in a row, and I recognize I need more than a day or two. I actually need a whole week. And then I also build in these kind of rest times in my year. So I might have a couple of months that are either full on rest months where I don't do very much at all, or they're like half. I cancel. I don't do a lot of calls on those months. Maybe I do more writing than anything else, and that's restorative to me. So a couple of months built into my year. So June and December's are the months that I take. But you might think for yourself, like, what would be a year long structure that would really serve you? And then even on those other months that aren't June and December, what are things that I can build in there? Do I take weekends fully off? Do I stop working at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock or 5 o'clock or whatever it is that would really be helpful to me? Do I take breaks during the day on a regular basis? And so these are things that I think about, and I encourage you to do the same. What are you going to do to help make sure you're getting the right recovery for the amount of stress that you have? And then how do you recognize how much stress you're putting into it? Like, are you constantly stressed and running yourself into the ground every single day? Are you working 12-hour days, 14-hour days, those kinds of things? Are you shutting off your computer or getting away from your phone at night? Or are you constantly plugged in? Do you have any kind of social time? Do you do anything alone where you have space where you're not working, but you actually have some alone time? Do you have recuperative time with others? So think about these things and then figure out what you need. And this is not there's no fixed answer here where I'm going to tell you, here's the formula. Of course, we all want a fixed formula, but that's not how this works. We have to learn how to respond to our individual needs. And so what you need to do is do a cycle of experiment. So what that means is every week and every month have a reflective time. In fact, I would say even better is every day. So some reflective time either in the evening or in the morning, if you can do daily. And if that's too much, then at least have one day a week, Sundays or Mondays, something like that, where you reflect, how am I feeling right now? Am I really stressed out? Am I feeling overworked? Am I feeling overloaded? Do I need more rest? And if so, how can I take responsibility for that? A lot of times people think, oh, I can't rest because I have so much to do. And if that's the case, take responsibility for the fact that right now you don't feel like you can rest. And that's either your own fears or your inability to let others support you. So, for example, um, if it's your fears, you just cannot shut off. You cannot say no to things. You cannot reduce your commitments because you're afraid that if you don't, then something bad is going to happen. And so look at that. Like, that's my own fears. How do I calm my fears down so that I can actually say no to people? So I can say, hey, you know what? My plate is actually too full. I need more space. Or no, I can't do that. Or I need to shut off at a certain time every day. So those are fears. But the other thing is I'm unwilling or unable to let people support me. So do you have things that are on your plate that you can ask others to do or say no to? Do you have things that, you're taking on the full weight of that others can carry some of the load? We often don't want to do that because we're worried about overburdening others or asking for help or even admitting that we might need help. But that is a broken model, is to say, like, I have to do everything on my own and I can't ever admit that I need help, as if needing help is a weakness. Actually, asking for help is an act of leadership and an act of generosity. It's leadership because leadership is not doing everything yourself, but it's inviting others to be on this project with you, to be helping you to make this amazing. And so that's leadership. And then generosity is like, what if I took all of the tasks and I don't let anyone else do it? It's kind of like I'm the only one who's able to do this and you guys can't. What if I share in the journey with you? What if we could all like row this boat together, to grab an oar and paddle together? That's actually an act of generosity. I know that when people let me help, I feel really good. I feel like I'm contributing in some way. Why would we want to stop others from contributing? So, fears and not letting others support you are the things that have us not able to take that kind of give ourselves the recovery that we need. The next thing that I really want to talk about is how we can recognize the signs. And so, what I'd like you to do as you listen to this is check in with yourself right now. How does your body feel? How does your mind feel? Does it feel excited about life? Does it feel rested? Does it feel open and spacious and peaceful? Or do you feel overwhelmed? Do you feel super stressed out? Do you feel run into the ground? Do you feel frazzled? Do your nerves feel frazzled? Do you feel irritable? Do you feel super tired and exhausted? Do you feel dull and like not excited about things? So these are some things to ask yourself. And what, as I'm asking you to check in on yourself right now in this moment, just notice like what are the symptoms? What are the signs? There isn't anything wrong with having them, but what if you could check in with yourself more often and just do a little bit of a pulse check, a temperature check, a an oil check for the engine. And so that's what we're doing here is we're getting some vital signs. How is my outlook on life right now? Do I feel excited and joyful and feel full of wonder and gratitude? If so, then that means that you're well rested and recuperated. Or do I feel like, I'm a victim and everything is a burden and I feel like not excited, everything feels dull, I feel tired, I feel drained, I feel frazzled, my nervous system feels fried. I feel, like easily like snapping at people. These are signs that I'm not well rested, that I'm overstressed and I'm not letting myself recover. And so then I just need to notice that and then adjust. If you had someone who was training you, they would ask you these things and then they would say, okay, here's how we're going to adjust your training plan. You're going to have lower load today and tomorrow. And then we're going to check in with you in 2 days and see, can you increase the load from there or do you need more rest? And so your coach would do that, but I encourage you to be your own coach. Check in with yourself daily, and when you feel yourself overloaded, adjust the load for today and tomorrow, and then check in the day after that. You might need more than a day or two of rest. And so that's okay. We just give ourselves the amount of rest that we need until we're back to at least a decent amount of battery charge, and then we can take on the world. That's what we're looking for. Do you feel ready to take on the world, take on challenge? Then you are in the place that you want to be. But if you are constantly running yourself into the ground, you will not be able to take on challenge. You are lowering your resiliency. So stress can actually increase our resiliency over time if we manage the stress load and not overdo it too much, and we give ourselves recovery time. If we can do that, then stress actually increases our resilience, and that's what we want. We don't want zero stress where we're actually reducing our resilience. If we have zero stress in our lives, we're shrinking our lives down, we're actually reducing our resilience over time. What we want is more resilience by being willing to actually stress ourselves at an appropriate level and then recover. And by doing that, we're actually increasing our resilience, increasing our capacity to take on challenge, and actually improving, the capacity of our engine so that we can actually do more, we can take on more in the world, we can learn more, we can love more, we can play more, but definitely we are going to bring our full force of our life force into whatever it is that we're facing. So that's what I'm encouraging you to do is to check in with yourself more regularly, adjust your load so that your resilience is increasing instead of decreasing over time. That's what I've got for you today. If you have questions, please email me if you're listening to the audio version of this, podcast@zenhabits.net. I get that in my inbox and I read to every single one and I reply to a lot of them. If you're watching the video version of this on YouTube, which I highly recommend because I look amazing, put a comment below and let me know if this helped you, if you have questions, if you struggle with this, and what is your struggle. I'd love to hear. And I reply to every comment, even if it's sometimes just with a heart emoji or something like that. I reply to every comment. So leave a comment. I would love it. Have an amazing day. Please take care of yourself. Get yourself to that full capacity. Increase your resilience over time and feel pumped and psyched about life. Thanks, my friends.